This is The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio or on the ESPN app.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. You send us a tweet to the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. That is at Bomani_Jones. Well, I see you guys got the nice fun topics ready for me to talk about. Apparently the dominant topic in the sports today is Michael Bennett. He put something on Instagram that was detailing on August 26th, after the fight in Las Vegas, that he wound up face down with police officers pointing guns at him. He said that they used excessive force. He said he felt terrified. He said he felt helpless. He said a cop put a gun to the back of his head and said, "Don't move or he'll blow his effing head off." He said at that point another officer came, put his knee into his back, and then they handcuffed him. And, of course, the immediate swirl of people saying, well, we don't know if this really happened started. And then TMZ was like, hold up. And then TMZ had a partial video that seems like one of those that's going to turn into a full video, because I doubt that somebody just took a video of those 30 seconds and then sent it to TMZ. I feel like we're probably going to see more of this as it goes. Michael Bennett said that he would be hiring an attorney, that he had hired an attorney. He says that his attorney's name is John. Well, no, he doesn't say. That his attorney's name is John Burris. He works out of Oakland. And here is John Burris detailing what Michael Bennett's legal options are.
Well, the legal options are that you can file a federal civil rights lawsuit alleging that at the very least, that the stop and detention was unlawful, the use of the weapons and the manner in which they were excessive, and the detention was excessively long, and it was an intentional infliction of emotional distress by putting the gun to the back of his head and threatening to blow it off. So there are legal issues that are there that to be considered, but nothing has been decided as of yet.
All right. Now, look, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how this goes with the court. I know how things go in criminal court. Cops typically get off of these sorts of things. I do know, though, in civil court that cities tend to pay out larger judgments on this. You would think that citizens would get tired of their tax dollars being set on fire, as I always hear about your stinking tax dollars. However, this seems to be an expense that people are willing to incur. I wanted you to hear that sound. Actually, if you could play that one more time, because there's a part I want to highlight.
Well, the legal options are that you can file a federal civil rights lawsuit alleging that at the very least, that the stop and detention was unlawful, the use of the weapons and the manner in which they were excessive, and the detention was excessively long, and it was an intentional infliction of emotional distress by putting the gun to the back.
That intentional infliction of emotional distress. So I watched that video. Now, I want you to know, I am generally out of the business of watching videos of police brutality. I am absolutely out of the business of watching people being killed on videos. I don't feel like this internet was established so that we could more readily send videos out of people dying. It's hard on me. I think it's almost disrespectful to a point. I'm just done watching the videos of people dying. This one came out, and it was like, okay, I guess I need to watch this. So once it hit, I hit the button, and I guess by the time the video starts, you see Michael Bennett. He's laid down, face first, on the ground, and he's got, you can tell it's Michael Bennett, right? It's the beard and everything else. He's laid out. There's the one cop that's on top of him. Then there's another one that's standing higher up, and he's got a gun pointed from up there because I guess he's afraid that Michael Bennett with both hands behind his back is going to turn into the Incredible friggin' Hulk, and then everything's going to go crazy, and they're going to have to shoot him. And then apparently because he's the Incredible Hulk, he might not even kill him with the bullet, so I don't know what they were going to wind up doing next. But I'm listening to it, and while he's laid out on the ground, and I'm hearing what he's saying, and there's just something that jumped out that I'll never forget about that, which was he's laid out on the ground. This dude is laying on top of him. He's handcuffed, and he's trying to ask questions. And the whole way, he's still calling that man sir. Everybody out here that's got the question about, well, we don't know what happened before the video and everything else. You're right. We don't know what happened before that video. I do know, though, by the time you see that video, Michael Bennett's laid out on the ground with that dude treating him the way that he is, and he is still being every bit as polite as he possibly can be, and he's still out here calling that man sir. And you know why he's calling that man sir. He's calling that man sir, trying to make sure nothing happens. Because in that situation, if you've ever been anywhere near a situation like that, everything you're doing is about, depending on your perspective, making that other man on the other side, or woman, as the case may be, making that officer feel bigger, and by extension, making yourself smaller. Like Michael Bennett is huge. He's 270-some pounds or whatever it is. Y'all, at every turn in that, the whole thing that he's got to do and what his responsibility is, I got to make myself look smaller. That's what he's got to do. Because I don't know how many of y'all have been jacked up by police in a situation where the cops have pulled a gun on you. I've had the cops pull a gun on me, right? Ain't nothing to brag about. I'm just telling you, it's happened, right? I've also had a gun pulled on me by somebody who was trying to rob me. And you know what? I wasn't scared when the dude had the gun to my head to rob me. I was scared when the cop had the gun out on me. You know why? Because I knew that dude who robbed me, I knew what he was doing. He wanted money. The dude that came to rob me wanted money. I had money. As long as I was able to turn up that money and made sure not to get a look at him, I was going to wind up being good, right? It was jittery after the fact and everything like that, but I didn't really have any fear that man was going to kill me. I had no idea what was going to happen when the cop pulled a gun out on me, because I don't know what the cop wants, right? Cop don't want money. There is no, just simple transaction that is taking place. There's no quid pro quo that you wind up on that one. All you are is a person with a gun to their head where there's no reason to have the gun to your head, and all you can hope is that nothing happens to make somebody use that gun. That's all you got. And that's where Michael Bennett was, calling that man sir. Now, can you imagine that? Can you imagine being Michael Bennett, being rich, being famous, right? Being a somebody, at least in the ways that the society says that you are somebodies. And you laid out on the ground, and this dude right here has the power to make you call him sir. Now, you want to talk about the infliction of emotional distress? That was the part for me in watching that just had me so aggravated the whole way. At some point, we could try to get into the intrigue about what happened or anything else. I figure we probably better serve waiting on that one. Where this becomes interesting is that Michael Bennett is the dude that has decided he's not standing for the national anthem. He said he's going to sit, and then he put this thing out about equality, the note on social media, and it's explained to him, this is to him, is why it is that I do not stand for the national anthem, because this sort of thing should not be happening. These are the things that I protest against. I've had people who have raised the question as to whether or not the cops did it on purpose because he's Michael Bennett. And I'm like, yo, how crazy is it that I have no idea? Yeah, you can make the argument, hey, out of all those people, that happened to be the one that they targeted, or he could have been the one they targeted just because he was the big dude. Who knows, whatever it is. But in the end, that man who's ascended to a place where you should not have to be in a position like this, at least according to the theories that people to give you, he laid out on the ground, and he got to call this man with his knee in his back or whatever, sir. In effect, begging for his life without saying the words that he's going to do it. And you ask the question as to why it is that man don't stand for this anthem. Right? Because that was so many of you guys. Remember that. The thing with Kaepernick when it first came down, it's oh, yeah, you don't love America, but America allowed you to make all that money. Well, how come America allows cops to do the man like that? And I think that's the question that we need to start answering, and that people have such a tendency to ignore that is ultimately so problematic. Let me just give you something to just kind of think about here. As a black person, and I hate using that phrase, as a black person, but I do think it kind of, is more applicable in this sort of thing. I think that most black people have some story in their lives that they can tell you about, the horrible disappointment that comes from hearing what your white friend might say when you're not around, or what your white friend said while you were around, acting like you weren't around. It's a palpable, incredible disappointment that you wind up with if you feel like you're dealing with somebody that is evaluating you for who you are, which is such a difficult thing to find in our lives. And then whatever the reason is, you hear something and you're like, wait a minute. Nope. That's not what happened here. It's crushing. Especially if it's somebody that you consider to be a really, really good friend, right? That sort of thing is legitimately crushing. I could point to handfuls of those in my life that have happened. But it's a unique and special sort of disappointment where even the most cynical person, and I'm fairly cynical about a lot of these things, once that happens and you find out, man, it hurts. It hurts you deep inside of where you are, because I think in the end, all of us just simply want to be evaluated as who we are and to be treated with a certain measure of humanity. And when you find out that somebody that's close to you does not view you through the lens of that humanity, there's a pain that comes along with it. And so we just went through the 12th anniversary of Katrina a couple days ago. And I remember for Katrina, Katrina for me was a macro level moment that felt the same way, where my father and I, we are clearly of different generations, and we would have arguments about the state of race in America. And I was very much so on board with the kind of it's not racist class sort of thing. We've come a long way and everything else. And I remember seeing Katrina and kind of realizing how wrong I was. And it was that same level of disappointment, the rug being pulled out, where, okay, I thought we had gotten to a point. I thought that this is what it was. And then you look up and you realize entirely that that's not what it is. And so when you think about a cat like Michael Bennett and that decision, you're not going to stand for the national anthem or anything else, right? Like, it's almost like that, the opening scene of The Godfather, right? Like, I believe in America. And we ask people very often in a lot of ways to believe in America. And a lot of people very much so believe in America. Some of them believe in America because that's the only choice they got. They need something to believe in. That's the thing that they have. And so many of us, like, you want to believe in America. And then something like that happens to Bennett. And you watch so much of America try to explain why that's okay. And when you hear the people try to give these explanations, just default to try to explain why that's okay, it feels almost in that same way. It's like you hearing the way that America talk about you when you're not around. And it's kind of that same pain, and it's kind of that same anguish and that same disappointment. But I want you to stop and think yourself, if you made the kind of money that Michael Bennett made, imagine having that dude throw you on the ground and you have to call him sir. Tell me how you feel about abiding by that. 888-729-3776. That's our telephone number. We'll be back with more on Michael Bennett on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Welcome back to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Clarence Hill and the Fort Worth Star-Telegram will join us next segment. Clarence Hill will join us at 4:30 Eastern, talk about what's going on with the Cowboys and Zeke in the NFL. 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. And hey, stop Straight Talk. Brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. We talked a little bit about Michael Bennett in the last segment. Here is Michael Bennett's lawyer. His name is John Burris, and he says this is what Michael Bennett would want from taking legal action.
It's not so much the money from Michael's point of view. He has a lot of money. But I think from his point of view is standing up for righteousness, standing up when something has been done to you that is wrong. I hope he thinks that this becomes a lesson for other young people when this happens to them, that they do have rights. And it also means, we hope, that other police officers will not be so quick to snatch someone off the street and threaten them. So there are certainly social conscious issues that are involved here. And as to the money will flow based upon what the damages are, because he was emotionally traumatized by this. But for him, the big issue is standing up to be heard and to be seen for something that was wrong.
By the way, not to take away from the gravity and seriousness of the situation, but go ahead and give John Burris, Burris, a Google. I was expecting Shannon like the older, gray-haired dude with the three-piece suit, right? Perhaps looking like one of the original board members of the NAACP. Instead, I got this dude that looked like he might have a lace front on. And that's how you know he's good at his job.
I was trying to give him
the details.
I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt too.
I looked at the picture at the same time independently and both had the same question. We're like, oh boy, them edges is perfect in a way that is kind of too perfect. Anyway, he talked about wanting to bring attention to this and that maybe the police could, then stop doing these things and people would not be as likely to get snatched up out of the street as Michael Bennett allegedly was. And there seems to be some video to at least give some credence to the idea that he was a little bit too calm for them to have needed to throw him down on the ground as they did. Let me ask you guys a question. Why do you think these things happen? Like, just as a serious question, you're like, why do you think these things happen? Because one thing that's interesting is police brutality comes up in sports a lot, and it has come up in sports a lot over the years. And, like, when it does, it might be a blip in, like, the little hometown that somebody has, but y'all are inclined to just take the cop's word for it anyway, so it doesn't really come up so much. Like, I remember, I think it was 2006 I looked this up. This dude named Fred Weary used to play for the Houston Texans, got tasered on the side of the freeway in the middle of the afternoon in Houston. Right? There's a story there for a little bit, but not so much. Shannon, you remember that time that Cedric Benson was on the boat with his mama and a bunch of people, and then the cops pulled up on a boat, took him on the boat. He left on the boat. They went around the corner. He came back beat up. You remember that?
No, I do remember that on the boat. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like these things happen. Cedric Benson got beat up by the cops, and that became a whole scandal because we were like, oh, my God, Cedric Benson's been detained by the police. And then Benson got busted not that long after in Austin for a DUI that was ultimately thrown out. And he wound up losing his job. Why? Because the cops messed with him twice. That's why. Like, there's real consequences to this sort of thing. And if Michael Bennett hadn't handled this in the way that he had, there's no telling what somebody would have thought if they just come across some video of him being on the ground and what conclusions that people would have been drawn immediately about him. The presumption is always going to be that you have to prove that something happened to you at the hands of the police in a way that does not happen vice versa. Now, that seems to be counterintuitive to the notion of what it's like to be American, but that is the way it goes. Like, that's the way that we handle these things when they happen to athletes, is we're immediately going to what it is that you did wrong. People have been doing this on airwaves as it relates to Michael Bennett, where it's just like, well, hold on, we're not sure. Well, hold on, we're not sure. Well, hold on, we're not sure, and all this stuff. Here's the one thing I am sure of. The reason that a police officer can feel so confident about throwing Michael Bennett down and his partner coming with the gun or whatever it is. You know, the big reason why he can feel so confident doing this? Because this is what y'all want. Now, y'all is not really, I guess, going to any particular person. You can say that I'm generalizing, but I will call y'all in this case America. And the reason I will call y'all in this case America, because America keep letting this happen. Like, a fundamental mistake that people are making is they're assuming that, and this is, you know, a certain subset of people, but they're assuming that people are going to see this video of what happened with Michael Bennett, and then finally, maybe now, they will get the point on what it is. Look, man, it's 2017. We've been using these tools and these devices to spread this information out for as long as it's been, right? Like, Rodney King was 25 years ago. Watts riots were 1965. We can go back all the way through history, through everything else. Matters of police brutality have been a big thing and in the forefront of people's consciousness for a very, very, very long time. There's nothing new about the notion of police brutality. There is nobody at this point, unless they just turned 11 years old or something like that, there's nobody that's going to see this and be like, oh, my goodness, finally now I get what the point is. Nah, I mean, I think maybe some, right? Like, I don't think that people are beyond redemption on this matter necessarily, but I think that people get the point very, very well. I think the point that people do not get on the other side is they like this. Like, that's the police that they want. They want the police that's just out here snatching random people and throwing them on the ground and putting guns to their heads. Anything it takes to make you, quote unquote, safe, at least in your notion of what safety is. Right? That's all that is. And then on top of that, you are going to fight vehemently. Many of you, not all you, but many of you are going to fight vehemently for your right to not give a damn about what happens to black people. Because the fundamental undercurrent of a lot that goes on here that I feel like that gets lost is that very thing right there. No one is going to infringe upon your right to not care what happens to black people. I had a friend of mine who told me about when he was a kid. He was fascinated by the Atlanta child murders of the late 70s and early 80s. He said he just really did a lot of reading on them because that was a big national story. The white dude who's telling me about this, right? He just kept reading the story, and he said his grandfather came up to him and said, "You don't care about that, do you?" And he said he was, 5, 6 years old, whatever it was. And he said even at that age, he knew what the answer was. He said, my man told him, like, "You don't care about that. You care about that, do you?" And he says, "No." And his grandfather says, "Well, why don't you?" He's like, "Because it's happening to black people." Like, he said he knew at that age that that was the right answer. And if you look and listen fundamentally to what so many people have to say about what's happened to Michael Bennett, they are fighting like hell for their right to not give a damn. So what they're going to do in many cases, they're going to come up with all kinds of excuses and contrivances to try to throw out there as to why it is they shouldn't care, why it was his fault or whatever it is. But what you will notice on these matters is that people fight like hell to defend their right to not care about how black people feel. That's why in these cities where they take down the Confederate statues by a vote by a committee or something like that, nobody really complains. As long as they feel like white people are the ones that are actually behind it, they good with it. Once it seems like black people are demanding it be done, now people are going to have a problem. Why? Because no one will infringe upon their right to not give a damn about what happens to black people. And ask yourself if that's what you're doing. Because I think that's a part that maybe you don't notice, like an undercurrent in this that you don't see it, you don't realize about yourself. Ask yourself when these things happen to black people, how hard you're willing to fight to say that you don't have to care. Right? Ask yourself how far you will go to explain to folks why this is irrelevant to you. Right? Or why anybody else shouldn't care. Or why is it that you care now but you didn't care about and everything else. Everything winds up going back to why it is that you're not required to care. And you know what? You are not required to care. I just don't know why it is that you think that you're not required to care about what actually happens to people, and then you think those people are required to care about standing for a song and a flag. Figure it out. Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Coming up next, Clarence Hill, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram on what's coming up next for Zeke in the NFL and the Cowboys on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the right time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. All guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Just like our next guest, he covers the Dallas Cowboys with Fort Worth Star-Telegram. He's also like the King of Dallas, man. I was trying to find a tailgate last year at Thanksgiving, man. Clarence had me set up with everybody. Clarence Hill of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. When did you become the King of Dallas, man? Some of my friends went down to Dallas this weekend and said you had him set up because you're the King of Dallas.
Man, I've been here a while. I've been covering the Cowboys a long time, and I'm a man about town, so it is what it is. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Now, with this Ezekiel Elliott case, yesterday we were hoping to have you on, but it took Harold Henderson too long to come to a decision, so the suspension has been upheld. How likely do you think it is that Zeke can get a win over the NFL at the very least on a restraining order?
Well, I think he'll get the TRO. Just sitting in that proceeding, and that was just a tremendous treat just to watch those lawyers go at it. And that Jeffrey Kessler, he earns every money he gets from the NFLPA because he ran that proceeding. But just listening to the judge yesterday, it seemed like he's inclined to hear the case, and he'll probably grant the TRO. He has until Friday. But he was basically parroting everything Kessler was saying. He was questioning the NFL hard on all the issues and regarding Kia Roberts and the procedural issues. And he just basically said this is something, he has concerns. And again, just because he has concerns, just because he has questions, doesn't mean the NFLPA and Elliott will ultimately win, because the focus is so narrow, the scope is so narrow within the CBA and how they can win this case in court. They've lost against Peterson, and they lost in the Brady situation. But, certainly the judge yesterday told us that the facts are different in this case than Brady and Peterson.
Now, do we have any idea what the timetable is that we'd be looking at for some sort of decision on the restraining order or just overall?
Well, a restraining order, he's going to announce that on Friday, by 5 p.m. Friday. And so he's going to let us, it's just going to just make an announcement or whatever else from the court system on 5 p.m. Friday, and then we're in for a fight. If he gets the restraining order, look for him to be able to play all season. And this thing goes to a fight that's going to be months long. And remember, the NFL certainly feeling that L they took yesterday, and most likely something they were going to do anyway, but they already filed their own lawsuit in New York, and they did that Tuesday night, trying to make a change of venue, change of jurisdiction, trying to get this thing out of Texas into New York.
All right, we're talking to Clarence Hill of Fort Worth Star-Telegram here on the right time. Now, we haven't heard that much from Jerry Jones since the suspension itself came down, but what has he had to say, or what have you guys heard about his thoughts on things as this has gone farther?
Well, I know personally Jerry is very upset and very angry. He was told by a high-ranking official in the NFL office that there will be no suspension. There was no case and no suspension. And that's why he was so confident and so adamant throughout all season, and certainly throughout June and July before the decision was made, that there would be no case and there would be no suspension. So he feels blindsided. He feels like he was lied to. Feels like there's some credibility issues in the league office, and he's being quiet right now because he doesn't want to spoil the case. He knows it's in court, and certainly he didn't want to say anything before the appeals hearing and all that other stuff. But he's told us when it's time for him to talk, he has a lot to say.
Now, how has the team handled Zeke after all of this? Because Jerry is kind of a redeemer of sorts. He takes on guys with their different sets of problems. But Zeke Elliott, at least on paper, is not the guy. This isn't Des Bryant with all the family questions and everything else. This is a guy who's had his parents around and all these things that people say are important, but seems to keep getting in trouble.
I mean, they've tried to keep a watch on Zeke throughout all this. Certainly they understood he liked to party going back to his days at Ohio State, and you can say the same thing about Joey Bosa. They were roommates. They had a good time. They understood that he came here. He did have a bodyguard. He does have a bodyguard that's employed him, that's supposed to be going out with him and taking care of those things. Certainly, everybody recognizes that he needs to make better decisions. He needs to make better choices. He needs to mature and grow up. Those issues that the Cowboys have talked about, they've talked to him about. He's losing money. If you look at the rise of Dak and both those guys were rookies last year in the rage, all the rage in the NFL, and that wasn't a high pick. He didn't get much money. He's making a lot of money off the court now because of his image. And Zeke doesn't have any national advertisers. He doesn't have any national sponsorships. And this guy was the rookie of the year and maybe the best running back in the league. He has nothing. So he's cost himself money, and he recognizes that. His people are recognizing that. So, yes, he needs to mature. He needs to grow up. They still say he's not guilty. He's still adamant about not being guilty in this incident. But, yes, he needs to make better choices. They recognize that.
All right, we're talking to Clarence Hill, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Now, you had a report, and we've seen this come out, the wait-a-minute moment in one of these was going through this and seeing Lucky Whitehead's name turn up in the paperwork as Ezekiel Elliott's ex-girlfriend and alleged accuser apparently had some relationship with him. Did anybody know about this last year? Like, people talk all the time about distractions with an NFL team. Do you think that would be a distraction? Did that ever come up?
Well, it didn't come up publicly. Certainly they knew about it. And, you know, when the Cowboys cut Lucky Whitehead and everybody was going crazy about them cutting Lucky Whitehead, you know, they knew all of this. And they, you know, had issues. They talked to us privately about them having issues with Lucky. And Lucky has a lot of other issues that they know about that the public didn't know about. And you guys want to know, why was he still on the roster? We're still on the roster because he was a camp body at that point. They'd already drafted somebody to replace him, but for injury reasons and roster reasons, they just were keeping him. But, you know, there was no way he was going to be on this team this year because they were going to release him. And so when that thing happened in Virginia or D.C. or whatever else, he was falsely accused of that situation, they cut their ties. And it was so much going on with him. But that whole situation of him messing with Tiffany Thompson, Zeke's girl, and the pictures coming back, that was just a number of issues that Lucky had with his team. But, yeah, this whole case has been so salacious. If you look at everything that came out, you know, from the appeal and everything he testified to, from the abortion to doing coke and other drugs in college to that sort of stuff. And that's the thing about it is Elliott has, say what you want, and you may question his morals and his decision-making, but he's been honest about a lot of things in front of the judge that don't make him look bad, or don't make him look good. That make him look actually bad to a lot of people, but at least he was honest about it.
All right, we're talking to Clarence Hill of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. And the last question for you is actual football question. If Elliott misses these 6 games this season, what do the Cowboys think they can do without him?
You know, they're very confident in their running game. They're very confident in what they have with Darren McFadden and Alfred Morris and those guys being able to run the ball. Certainly those guys are not as good as Zeke in terms of taking it to the house and being short yardage runners. But they're confident in being able to run because they still have this great offensive line. They're also going to lean more on Dak Prescott, and he's a guy that's ready to take on more. You know, he's not just a bus driver.
Ooh. Think we lost Clarence Hill? Not sure what happened there, but it was about that time anyway. Shannon, it might be the year that Darren McFadden puts it all together. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. All guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Thanks to Clarence Hill of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram for joining us last segment. Pablo Torre of ESPN The Magazine will join us in the 5 o'clock Eastern hour. Remember, if you miss anything live, check out the Right Time podcast available on the ESPN app. Right Time is brought to you by Upside. Now save big on travel and get a big gift card every trip you buy. You'll love Upside.com. Upside.com. All right, 888-729-3776. That's our telephone number. So Bucs Dolphins has been postponed due to Hurricane Irma. The teams will now play in Week 11. I don't know how many of you guys drafted Buccaneers or Dolphins, but I will be the guy to come out here and say this has a real effect on the way we're going to start this fantasy season, Shannon. Like nobody's expecting to have it. You think I drafted Deshaun Jackson? Think I wouldn't have him for Week 1? Come on, man. The bye week is part of the process, right? Like the bye week, you got to make sure you don't have your whole team out on the same bye week. I've done a lot of work around now. Now, I don't know. Let me look now who has to play wide receiver for me now that this has happened. Yes, I know the storm is a very big deal. I used to live in Miami. I hope everybody is safe, but we are talking about the actual, like, nuts and bolts football elements of this. And one of them is now these teams have to play 16 straight games. Now, I understand that there's a generation of football fans that has never known a life without a bye week. In fact, some of us, Shannon, you remember that year that we had 2 bye weeks? Y'all remember that one? I want to say it's like 93 and 94, we had 2 bye weeks. It was an 18-week season. Okay, I guess not. You're just...
really got me. I really forgot that.
Look it up. There was one season where there were 18 weeks and it just dragged the season on so people weren't really trying to hear it, right? But it used to be they played 16 straight weeks. You look back on that and you were like, wow, how did nobody ever come up with a bright idea beforehand to throw in a bye week? That seems silly. And Chris Baker of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he appears to agree.
Well, I guess we'll find out. I just know, even just going 8 straight weeks, when you go home and you're going through the angst and pain of just, playing in a football game, and you need that 8th week or whatever week you get your bye week on just to relax, get your mind away from football, and to go 16 straight weeks, It's hard just to make it through a 16-week season without a break. So now just go 16 weeks straight is going to be very tough for both teams. That's still a tough decision because you put us on a neutral site, we'll have to leave our families. So none of us want to leave our families to play a football game.
By the way, Shannon, I feel like my man right there, I feel like they need to, get him a teammate who cuts his eyebrows so that dude can be chopped and he can be screwed. Because he sounded like he was screwed.
When I first heard it, I thought the audio was messed with. I thought it was chopped and screwed for a second there.
I got a pocket full of stones. That's what I thought we had from him. Yo, man, 16 straight weeks of football is insane to consider. We had a guy call in yesterday, and he made the best point I think I'd heard about, how to think about what it is playing football. And he's like, look, man, imagine going out and fighting 3 rounds against Evander Holyfield and then doing it again next week and then doing it again the week after that and the week after that and the week after that. When this thing first came down and they were talking about, maybe having to postpone the game and 16 straight games are all bad, and everybody's like, hey, man, there's a hurricane coming. These dudes are like, yeah, a hurricane's coming, and you know what's coming next Sunday? A hurricane in pads that is going to hit us. This is such an L for the players. I had people that hit me up, and they were like, yeah, well, what's the union doing? And I don't know what anybody was supposed to do here because everybody's out here for the money. So you're not about to cancel a game. Canceling a game is not an option. That's not going to happen. They couldn't just play the game in Tampa, I don't think, because, Shannon, I haven't seen exactly what's going on with this storm, but it don't feel like Tampa far enough away.
Yeah, no, it might be on the other side of Florida, but that's not far enough.
When I seen the pictures of Hurricane Irma on the satellite, it's like when you go watch those Jadeveon Clowney recruiting tapes. It's not like, oh, I wonder what player it is that I'm looking for. No. That big old mass right there, that's what it is. They couldn't move that game to Tampa. They had no real option. They could try to go a neutral site. I think everybody was trying for that. I'm assuming that the Dolphins and the Buccaneers would have preferred a neutral site, even if the Dolphins would have walked away for some money, because you don't want your guys playing 16 straight weeks. You don't want that. You don't. But this is what we got. Now, we will take this and turn it in a different direction for something that we wanted to talk about yesterday, but I thought of it too late. So I'm going to hit it right now, man, because I always feel like people underestimate just what the damage is that comes from playing football, even though a whole lot of y'all didn't want to play football in high school because they hit too hard, or you got to college and you didn't want to play football because they hit too hard, or you got out there in 7th grade, looked around and realized you ain't want to do that because they hit too hard. It just wasn't what you was about. So call us here, 888-729-3776. We'll take your calls all through the show. Tell us about the day that you realized you were done playing football. You might have played a little football before. You might have played a lot of football before. But the day that you just looked up and realized, nah, bruh, I'm not here for this. I'm not here. I got a homeboy. Now, please understand this about my homeboy. My homeboy used to go by the name Crazy. He got Crazy tattooed on his wrist. When he come to my mama's house, my mama says, hey, Crazy, good to see you, right? This is who he is. He said when he was in high school, him and his partners were out playing playing touch football out there, and the coach saw him. He said, the coach was like, oh, yeah, why don't you come out here, try out for the football team? So he came out there. He got out there in the pads. He did everything there was, to play football. He said it was all good. Then they're like, okay, cool, man, let's get some other people out here. And he said they put a safety out there that was like an all-district safety or something like that, man. He said he caught a pass. Something happened. He said that safety came and hit him. He said he stood up. It was one of them helmets that the strap at the top and at the back. He said he grabbed it on both sides, undid that chin strap, took off that helmet, handed it to the coach, didn't even look at him, and just walked away. And the coach like, where you going, man? No. Gotta go. Because that moment right there, he realized, nope, no football for me.
Stevie tweeted to us. He said his high school basketball coach quit football in high school after going across the middle and waking up 5 minutes later. He was hit by Sean Taylor. Oh. Sean Taylor made him quit, literally on the spot, took his pads off, and focused on basketball.
Dude, can you imagine being a high school football player and looking up, and it's Sean Taylor? We talked to the dude yesterday who said he had to tackle Adrian Peterson in high school. No, man, I'm not doing that. I don't need a challenge in that way. I don't have a mountain that I'm trying to climb. I'm not doing that. So y'all call us, 888-729-3776, the day that you realize that there was no more playing football. Hey, Shannon, think about it like this. People play rec league basketball. They play rec league baseball. They ain't playing no rec league tackle football.
This is The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio or on the ESPN app.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. You can send us a tweet at the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. That is at Bomani_Jones. Oh, boy, we've asked you guys to call in with your story about the day you realized you were done playing football, and y'all were like, man, I can't wait. We'll get to that in a second. 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. Actually, let's go straight to this one. I talked a little earlier about Michael Bennett, and I talked about, generally, my belief that the reason that the state of affairs is what it is with police forces and citizenry and everything else is this is the way that people want it to be. Right? That the people who have the power to change these things, this is the way they want it to be. Therefore, it's not going to change. So you can keep pointing out what's happening and hope that people see the problem, assuming they think it is a problem. So let's hit the phones and talk to Ben in South Carolina. Hi, Ben.
Hey, Bomani, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Just to start out, I'm a white guy.
Really?
I grew up in Vermont and didn't really have a lot of exposure to black people. I think there were two in my high school, and they were brother and sister. And moved down here, and my friends couldn't understand that I didn't feel differently about black people than I did about white people. And my answer to that was exposure. We used to spend some time on Martha's Vineyard, and as you know, Spike Lee and a lot of wealthy people are down there. And so the only exposure I had to black people were wealthy black people. And it skewed my view of who black people were, and that they weren't that different from white folks. And a friend once asked me, if you were walking down the street and you saw a black guy on one side and a white guy on the other side, would you walk towards the white guy? And I said no, because the only white guys the only people who've ever beaten me up were white guys. But I think your generalization about, when you say that preserving the right to not care about black people, I assume you're talking about white people.
In this particular instance, yes.
Yeah. I gotta argue with that, that if white people are watching a black person get beaten up, your argument, I guess, would be that the white people don't care, wouldn't want to, find out what's going on, and if he's being wrongly attacked, defend him. But I think you
to be clear, not every single white person, but a significant number. Yes, I believe that to be true.
Okay, couldn't you make the argument the other way, that if a group of black men or women saw a white guy getting beaten up, that they would, instead of feeling that they don't care, they would actually feel a little happy?
Based on what?
Based on,
like, I'm trying to. I hear what you're saying, but I think that you can look at the behavior of black people in America for a long time and say, in spite of all those things, we still cling to and hope for the acceptance and affection of white people. We still do. It's hard to make any argument to the contrary to say that black people do not do that. I don't really know that many people. I can tell you, I know some people who would be happy to see such a thing, but black people really don't dislike white people in the way that you would assume.
Then I got to tell you, I was in the Navy, and I was on a ship with 300 people, and there were 100 white guys and 200 black guys. And I was in the minority for the first time in my life. And these were guys who were willing to put their lives on the line for me. And when it came to whether it was, battle, or whether it was putting out a fire on the ship, or whatever it was, people say this, and people call it out for BS, but I didn't see color. I saw a person, a human being, who wanted to save my life.
I greatly appreciate that. I'm honestly glad to hear it.
Or vice versa, who I wanted to save. I saw the blue of the uniform. I didn't see the color of their face.
I'm glad. Like, thank you so much. But, Ben, I mean, I got to cut this short because it's going on too long because I don't know where the hell we was going. Anyway, Shannon, did I miss something? Like, I don't know what the larger point was.
Trying to find where he was going.
Well, here's my problem with what he's saying here is we got all this history, and you can go look at the news and everything else, and there are these, like, all these atrocities that have been committed against black people, like so many of them, and that people we see roundly ignore. So let's take an example like this, the thing with Michael Bennett. Michael Bennett winds up laid out on the ground like that. Everybody needs some proof on it. Shannon, you remember anybody saying anything about that yoga instructor when she got killed walking up on the cop car saying how she shouldn't have walked up on the cop car? Right? Like, what was the woman in Utah where the cop dragged her out and arrested her for not drawing blood from that dude? Right? Did you hear anybody saying she should have just done what the cop said or anything else, or you just should follow instructions or anything? Did you see that? If those are black people in the same situations, it is entirely possible, in fact, highly likely that somebody jumps in that situation to give some explanation as to why it is that black person shouldn't have done that. Like that time that cop pulled a gun out on me. I was on Interstate 65 in Owasso, Alabama in the year 2000, and I got my oil changed before I went on a road trip. My man forgot to plug the alternator back up, so the car died. So we called the cops to come get us, or somebody, because I had to call the cops. So I'm on the side of the road, and the cop car comes, and I see the cop, and I was like getting out of the car as I would if anybody else pulled up that I was supposed to meet, right? I got out of that car, and it was immediately, get back in the car! And I got back in the car, and I put my hand on the wheel, and the woman came up, and she had the gun, and she pointed the gun inside the car with flashlight, any guns, any knives, any contraband? And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, all those things. That's why I called you. I was just wondering if somebody could take these guns, knives, and contraband off my hand. And so she did that, and in the end, I look back on it, and I'm like, you know what? I see why I went that way, right? Like I can go back and I can do the steps and I can say, I see why it is that it went that way. And then there are other times after I do that, I look at myself and I say, wow, I really am at a place in like the social positioning and hierarchy that I'm explaining to myself why it was okay for that woman to pull a gun on me when I don't think that she would have pulled a gun on a whole lot of you. Like, I got to explain that to myself. Like, that's what this is. And that's like what I think about when Michael Bennett laid out on the ground, calling that man sir. Like, even in that situation, you got to pay the utmost deference. Even if you have to pay the utmost deference to somebody that's treating you like you less than a human being. What the hell is that? Anyway, let's get back to the fun part of this. We were talking about this. Shad, you said you never played football, right?
I never played tackle football.
You never played tackle football. You ever play even like recreational tackle football, just like, you know, in like elementary school?
No, it wasn't a big thing. Remember, I grew up in Brooklyn in the 80s. Like, football wasn't what it is now in New York. It was baseball and basketball.
Yeah, man, I went to Texas, man. When we moved to Texas, man, so, you know, we played tackle football, recess, elementary school, all of that. Like, that's just what we did. We played the tackle football. That was the game. I told y'all yesterday, man, that dude reached down and grabbed my face mask and picked me up and threw me backwards, and I was parallel to the ground before I hit it, and I was right there. I didn't quit football that day, but football quit me. What about the day that football quit you? 888-729-3776. That's our telephone number. Let's hit the phones and talk to M in Virginia. M, thanks for calling the right time.
Hey, Bomani, what's up, man? First time, long time. Big fan of the show.
Thank you, man.
I had two incidences. Well, the first one started maybe football wasn't for me, and the second one confirmed that I was lucky enough to go to prep school when I was young.
Hey, my man, it sounds like you got the phone too close to your face. You sound muffled.
Oh, I'm sorry, brother. Can you hear me now? Am I better?
Yeah.
All right. So I went to prep school, and I was very fortunate to go there. But long story short, in prep schools, you have something called postgraduates, where those who are destined for athletics or maybe the Naval Academy can stay an extra year in high school and basically be 19-year-old super seniors, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
So equivalent, freshmen and college-age men. So my prep school, we ran a scrimmage against a military academy. Their name escapes me right now. But they had a linebacker at the time who was a 19-year-old postgraduate by the name of Ahmad Brooks.
Okay,
so
I think it was Fort Union. Fort Union, right? I was thinking in
my
my head.
I think so.
One of the two.
Oh, yeah, Hargrave.
So.
I was thinking in my head, you about to tell an Ahmad Brooks story, and you are about to tell an Ahmad Brooks story.
I am about to tell you an Ahmad Brooks story. So anyways, I didn't start playing football until I was 14. My mom was smart about the whole brain injury thing, but she let me play in high school. Our very first scrimmage, we play them. And somewhere in the first series, I catch a pass, 15 yards. I'm feeling good. I'm throwing first down signs like I'm something hot, the dudes on TV trying to be that dude. Somewhere later in that same drive, I run a 7-yard slant across the middle. And Bomani, bruh, I can't even tell you, I can't even explain the feeling. He hit me so hard. That I couldn't even fumble the football. I'm pretty sure my body seized up, and I was on the ground. Snot had left my nose and was stuck to the inside of my Oakley windshield. You know the little glass windshield? Yeah, I have one of those, right? He hit me so hard I could literally see, boogers dangling from this windshield trying to come back on my face. I didn't play the rest of that series. I didn't even play the rest of that scrimmage. I should have been smart, and I should have quit during that time, right? You would think, okay, whatever. But I was actually an okay athlete, so I was fortunate enough to walk on later on at a Big Ten school. I went to Indiana. So Indiana comes around, and I'm an invited walk-on, so, not one of the scholarship dudes. And I'm playing there, whatever. And on one play, it was the same goddamn play. I'll never run a slant again in my life, so help me God. I run a slant in practice, and I get hit low by a guy named Austin Thomas. Now, you don't know him because he didn't make it big, but this dude was a freak. Came out of Georgia, 4-star recruit, the whole bit. Just a freak. And then I got hit up top high by Tracy Porter, a freshman Tracy Porter. And they hit me so hard that my body bent backwards, but my knees were still going forward. How I didn't get injured, I don't know. But it wasn't a week later that, I talked to my position coach at the time, and I was just like, listen, brother, I love the sport. I love the game. Maybe I'm just better off watching it on TV.
Well, man, I appreciate the call. And the moral of the story is walking on ain't the greatest idea. Walking on at Indiana. Woo! Who's going to save you? All right, 888-729-3776. That's our telephone number. We got your phone calls and why Sunday night's going to be awkward in Arlington. You're listening to ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Pablo Torre of ESPN Magazine will join us next segment. Pablo Torre will join us at 5:30 Eastern. We're going to talk about something. Right Time is brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics. Take a synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. So, again, Ezekiel Elliott, his 6-game suspension was upheld by the arbitrator, Harry the Henderson. It sounds like Harry the Henderson didn't want to come out of his office yesterday. I think they were supposed to give him a suspension, earlier in the day, whatever's going to happen. We thought it was going to be done by close of business before the court hearing. Shannon, we got off the show yesterday. We'd heard nothing from Harry, right?
He said the end of business day. The end of the business day. Our show ends at 7 o'clock Eastern.
Yes. He's like, the business day in L.A. Harry the Henderson was nowhere to be found because Harry's like, okay, it sounds like the decision has been made that we're just not going to overturn this. Therefore, since we're just not going to overturn this and it looks a little shaky, how do I come up with the rationalization for this one? Now, one thing about this is, if I'm not mistaken, and actually this is Ryan Smith here. He's the legal analyst here at ESPN, and this is what he explained about what Harold Henderson's role is in this.
Harold Henderson, everybody said, Harold Henderson's he's got to come in here and he's got to look at what Goodell did and weigh in on how he approached this case. That is not his job at all. His job is to look at the case that was put before him, look at all the evidence the guys argued in front of him, and decide, is the process fair? It's no different from if you're just trying to decide if the guy had due process, the guy was afforded witnesses, that kind of stuff. His job is not to evaluate how Goodell looked at the evidence, what evidence was before him. That's Goodell's job. This is an appeals officer, right? So, in a sense, Harold Henderson's only job is to make sure the process was fine.
So my question is this. How did Harold Henderson take all that time? Because remember, Shannon, didn't Harold Henderson say that the reason that it was taking so long was because of the volume of material? It was just so much stuff to go through?
Right, exactly.
I just want to know how he went through all that stuff and all the jankiness that seemed to go on in this investigation and then came back with the same suspension that Goodell had. That's the only thing I want to know. If the only person that actually talked to this woman says that she did not believe what she had to say, How do you go through all this stuff and then say, nah, what Goodell was talking about, that rocks out? If you have one of the doctors who the league said was not available to talk to Elliott's lawyers because she was sick, and then they went and knocked on her door and she was doing just fine, how do you come back with 6 games? Like, that's the question that I have. How do you still come back with 6 games after all of this? This is what happens when nobody can trust your process. And that's where the NFL is. The problem is y'all got no enforcement whatsoever on the fact that we don't trust the NFL's processes. Like, every now and then we'll get out here and we'll complain about it and da-da-da. But in the end, man, y'all still believe in the NFL. Like, as an almost religious entity, y'all believe in the NFL. They can lie to you. They can con you. They can do this thing as many times over. You can complain about this, that, and third. They pay you lip service. You be like, thank you, NFL. I'm so glad I get to watch football this weekend. Appreciate you. We just keep on doing this whole exact thing. And now this one, that looks as janky as anything that I can point to. They coming right back out with the 6 games. And I wonder if Ezekiel Elliott did not play for the Dallas Cowboys, if y'all would have stopped caring a long time ago. 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. We're getting you guys telling your stories about the day that you realized that football was no longer for you. Let's hit the phones and talk to Ryan in New Mexico. Ryan, thanks for calling the right time.
What's going on, Bomani? How are you doing?
Doing all right, man.
All right, so, I'm from New Mexico, and when I was younger, I moved to Pennsylvania. And, Bomani, I know you're from Texas, but I like to consider Pennsylvania as like the Texas of the North. And we played some pretty good rugby, football, Penn State, you know what I mean? So when I moved there, everybody was playing, football, and I wanted to be joining. And I started in middle school. I did okay. I had a pretty good growth spurt in middle school, so I did okay. But when I got to high school, I definitely wanted to be a part of the tradition and everything. And it was like two days, all of a sudden, I'm thinking I'm going to go out for wide receiver. I want to score touchdowns. Like you said earlier, I went across the middle, 3-year starter, slammed me right away. I ended up I was like, you know what, screw this. I ended up switching to kicker, and then ended up being just a high school kicker for the next 3 years. But I had a pretty good career, but I was like, no, I don't want to do this tackling thing. I better just go sit on the side and do some kicking drills. So.
Hey, man, they still get letter jacks for that, man. I appreciate the call, Ryan. 888-729-3776. Let's talk to David in Mississippi. David, thanks for calling the right time.
Hey, Bomani, how's it going, man?
Doing all right, man.
Good, man. Yeah, I was going to let you know, I don't know when football came to my life, but I know exactly when it went out of my life. In high school, I was just a punter. And when you're a punter in high school, you're like right field in a little league team. It's just like a piece of meat out there just to fill a position. And some dude got hurt, and so they asked me to run a kickoff back. And that was very strange to me because the coach told me once I got the ball, I had to run towards the opponents. I'm a punter. I'm used to running away from the opponents. So that was very strange. So I went ahead and ran towards the opponent. The dude hit me. It wasn't like a decleating. It was like a swooshing. Like the Nike swoosh flew up in the air off my sneaker. I don't think they ever found it. I think like the ground screw, whatever. But I had like a third cousin in Georgia, had like a stroke that exact same night. So the dude like altered my family tree. He hit me so hard. So that's when I actually left my life.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, David, I think, Shannon, that's competition here for like, wow, a de-swooshing.
Jeez.
Jeez. Furthermore, Louise. All right, 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. All right, we're taking your phone calls on what the day was that you realized that you need to quit football. But coming up next, going to talk to my man Pablo Torre, talk about what happened with Michael Bennett, with Zeke Elliott, and something fun he learned on vacation in Portugal. You're listening to ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. All guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, just like our next guest. He's a writer at ESPN The Magazine. Also, January 2nd, 2018, he and I will be doing a television show together from noon to 1 Eastern on ESPN. His name is Pablo Torre. Pablo, let's start with this Ezekiel Elliott thing as it continues to go. Can you imagine what it's like walking around being Harold Henderson at that office in the NFL? And it's like, I got to do the appeal on this janky case, but y'all really want a suspension?
I don't know Harold Henderson's background. I know we know enough about his background to know that we can point out exactly where he's contradicted himself in the sense that he said, I cannot disprove or refute the position of the commissioner, and yet he has done that previously, the Greg Hardy stuff and all that. But man, like the one thing we asked from the NFL was transparency. We wanted transparency. And the NFL sold us one of those tinted windows and called it transparency. And so, Harold Henderson, I don't know if you knew that this was coming, that we could all tell that it was a tinted window because there was another part of this case that could speak to the other side of the aisle, so to speak. But, man, that is not an assignment that anyone should look forward to.
I do have to say, though, Pablo, remember when I tried to tell you that we didn't know if this was transparency?
You did.
We had transparency.
You did. I mean, you had the great line about how credibility is like insurance and the NFL has no credibility, and you were right on that. What I was fooled into thinking was that the NFL could not be this dumb. I really thought that they wouldn't be this dumb. Because after everyone says to you, all we need is transparency on this, like the smart people in our business were at the point of saying, look, we know that this is messy. We know that the legal system finds this messy. We know that there are often no heroes in this interpersonal, deeply personal dynamic when it comes to domestic violence. So all we need you to do is be upfront with your thought process. Just be upfront and transparent. And the NFL gave us that long memo, that official letter on league letterhead, and all they needed to do was explain their thought process, and they lied about the thought process. So they were dumber than I thought, and that is something that I didn't think I'd say about the NFL.
And see, that's an interesting thing. We're talking to Pablo Torre of ESPN, the magazine. One, I'm assuming that you didn't think they could be dumber than you thought because you thought they were pretty dumb. But that is you made a colossal mistake that I have learned to stop making in this world, which is thinking that people can't be too stupid to do something.
I mean, did they just not think? Did they not realize that the investigator that they apparently, of course, did not listen to, who recommended, the investigator who talked to the woman in question who recommended no punishment, did they not think that detail would get out? Like, that's the thing that stuns me. The NFL, even forget the stupidity on the level of the semi-complicated level of adjudicating domestic violence. Let's just take this on the level of leaks. Let's take this on the level of, does information get out in stuff like this? And does information get out even when the NFL does not want that information to get out? And we learn in every single case like this, of course the NFL doesn't control the information. So what was the end game here? That's what I don't understand.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that part, because there I do agree that I would not have thought the NFL would be that dumb, because if they learn anything from the Ray Rice case in terms of their own handling of it, it is things get out. Like, that would be the thing. And so you had a lot of people who had hypothesized that part of why they'd taken so long is they were afraid that maybe there'd be some videotape, some Ray Rice-like incident. Instead, it seems they tried to run a cover-up where they didn't have to run a cover-up. But do you think they can run a cover-up because they think they have a media that'll just go along with whatever they say?
That's what I'm left with, is that they thought they'd be protected on this, in that being on the right side of a thorny controversy like this, being on the side of law and order in a situation where we've all been crying out for some semblance of law and some semblance of order, would have immunized them to criticism. But we're not even talking about the Seth Wickersham and Don Van Natta school of investigative journalism, where we have somehow the scene of NFL executives stamping out, breaking the Spygate tapes with the heels of their dress shoes. We're not talking about that kind of investigative journalism. We're just talking about the other party in a legal dispute having access to the information that they seem to assume would not make it out there. And that, to me, is just mind-numbing.
All right, talking to Pablo Torre of ESPN, the magazine, here on The Right Time. I want to switch gears a little bit right fast, talk about the situation with Michael Bennett. And it becomes interesting because Bennett is now like the current playing face of a movement of sorts. Kaepernick is not in the league, and he happens to be the guy thrown down on the ground by the Las Vegas Police Department. And then we have videotape. What do you make of all of this?
Yeah, first off, it's good on some terrible level that we are dealing with the specifics of a case of police brutality, as opposed to what we're normally left with, which is a debate about symbols that is degrees removed away from the social issue in question. And this is the case when we talk about statues and feelings and the heritage, not hate stuff. It removes us away from the actual the actual facts and reality of racial discrimination, for instance. In this case, we can discard, I hope, we can discard some of the symbolism and heritage, not hate sort of equivalency when it comes to the national anthem. Like, we're not dealing with the anthem anymore. So all of the stuff that we talk about with Kaepernick, which tends to focus around the military and the police in these abstract terms, actually gets narrowed down to a case in question. But Bomani, I want to ask you, have you read the most recent TMZ Sports update, which has come out very, very recently?
I have not.
Okay, so let me give you a little bit of that, because this is now causing all sorts of people, the predictable people you may be familiar with, to say, oh, he was caught lying. And this is, I'll read it real quick. Source expected the investigation tells TMZ Sports when cops responded to the club for a possible shooting, they ordered everyone to get down and not move so they could probably search and investigate. We're told Bennett did not stay put. Instead, he ran, and a cop outside the club stopped him and ordered him down to the ground at gunpoint. Our sources say Bennett was detained until cops could determine he was not involved in any possible criminal activity, and he was released. So now everyone on our corner of the internet is saying, oh, Michael Bennett was caught lying. I point two things in that very rapid summary I just mentioned. Number one, so gunpoint happens to be volunteered by this anonymous police source. So that's an interesting data point. But number two, if you are instantaneously believing this update, just be aware that you are instantaneously believing an anonymous police source with no evidence over Michael Bennett. And if that's not what Michael Bennett is protesting, I don't know what it is.
We're talking to Pablo Torre of ESPN The Magazine. Right before we let you go, man, apparently you learned something in Portugal on your vacation?
Well, I mean, I learned a couple of things. I learned mostly that you can create I was going to use the word meat telescope, but now I realize that sounds truly, truly inappropriate. But you can create a little telescope with your hands. Did you know that? Did you know about this?
No.
Okay, so if you don't have glasses, if you don't have contacts, if you're trying to look at something in the distance, you take your hand, you put it over your eye, you reduce the aperture, and you will clarify the object in the distance. You were all carrying around an invisible telescope, even if you didn't realize it. I also realized, by the way, that Cristiano Ronaldo has a museum in his hometown and also has an airport named after him. And anybody who thinks that Kobe Bryant is egotistical or LeBron James and the decision was egotistical should go to Funchal on the island of Madeira and realize that Cristiano Ronaldo has everybody else beat when it comes to building tributes literally to himself.
Just remember, Adrian Peterson has an Adrian Peterson Day parade every year in his own honor in Palestine, Texas, where I'm convinced he rides on the back of. Yes, and he rides on a cutlass in the parade. Not even lying. But that is Pablo Torre. Check out ESPN The Magazine, January 2nd, 2018. Bo and Pablo going to have a television show. It's going to be the bomb. Appreciate you, man.
Yes, of course, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. All guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Thanks to Pablo Torre of ESPN The Magazine for joining us in the last segment. Aaron Schatz, Football Outsiders, will join us at 6:30 Eastern. Nothing makes up for your football obsession like a surprise from 1-800-Flowers.com. When you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you get an extra bouquet for free. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. So a little bit earlier, we had people calling in telling stories about the day they realized they ain't need to play football anymore. I feel like we take for granted what the abuse is that NFL players take. So I thought that some of y'all talking about the hits that y'all took as regular old civilians will help people get the hint of what it's going to be like. Just thinking about the Dolphins and the Bucs playing them 16 straight games, no break. And Shannon, I think they got and they have a trip to London, the Dolphins do, in this season.
Man, that's a lot of wear and tear on your body. Jeez.
Yeah,
I didn't realize they had a London trip.
They got a London trip, and I think they got another short week. It's going to be monster. All these dudes' bodies. Let's find out what football did to y'all's bodies. 888-729-3776 on the Deshaun in California. Deshaun, what's going on?
Hey, Bo. Man, I might have been 10 years old growing up in Monterey Bay, California. So at that point, I'm thinking I'm Jerry Rice. This is about 89, 90. So I'm thinking I'm Jerry Rice. So I'm out there stunting. This flag football practice on top of this. So I'm out here stunting. I'm getting touchdowns. I'm talking mess. And one of the dudes didn't take too kind of it, and we called him Fat Lewis. Okay, if you got a name of Fat Lewis in elementary, you obviously a pretty big kid. So Fat Lewis, mind you, his brother was the coach. So that changed everything. So they decide they going to set me up because I'm talking a little bit too much mess. And they throw a little lob jump ball type thing right over the middle. Fat Louis just catches me in the air. Don't let me come down. None of that. He just holds me. And when I say the whole team, offense and defense, jumped on that pile, that was it, brother. When I got up, I just took off my flags and I walked home, and I'd never seen a football again. I said, I'm done. Fast forward 15 years, I catch Fat Louis and his brother in a rec center playing basketball. Bo, you know, I can barely dunk, Bo. I can barely dunk. This at 28 at this point, so I can't even dunk no more. But you best believe I tried to shake him. I wanted to punk because at this point, he ain't taller than me no more. You ain't bigger than me no more. So 15 years later, I still hold a grudge. Like, man, if I ever catch you, of course I wasn't going to fight him at that age because he's 200 pounds at 10. So I had no problems getting away from him then. But later on, woo.
But see,
never
Deshaun,
touched the
man,
football again.
Deshaun, man, I appreciate the call. This leads me to somebody that you guys may not know. Apparently, everybody in L.A. went to school with a fat insert person here. Should I ever tell you about my homeboy and this story about some dude named Fat Travis? Like, my homeboy swear that he was the man at his middle school, and there was a Fat Travis, and everybody picked on Fat Travis, and he picked on Fat Travis once and mushed him, and then turned his back, and then Fat Travis beat him up. This happened to this dude when he was like 9. He's 22 years old. He told me once, he was like, man, I was really, going through a lot at that point in my life. My father had just left. The Fat Travis incident. He put the Fat Travis incident right after my father had just left. Yes. The Fat Travis incident was the next hardship. Be careful how you treat the fat insert person here. 888-729-3776. That's our telephone number. Dwayne in Washington. Why'd you quit playing football?
All right. Hello, Mr. Jones. Mr. Penn.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'm 5'8". I was a buck 80-85 back then, ran a 4.5 and cool, whatever. So the coach, now this is at a D2, D3 school. I don't even remember. Coach was like, hey, we're going to do running back, block the linebacker drills, when they blitz. And he's like, you can't cut him. So he has an 8-yard head start. I got an 8-yard head start. Problem is, like I said, I'm 5'8", buck 85. Linebacker was 6'4", 255. I mean, you just do the math right there. And he said I couldn't cut him. And I'm going heads up with this dude. I'm getting bowled over. And this happens 3, 4, 5 times. And after that 5th one, I couldn't hear anything anymore. Everything was, I'm all jacked up. Football quit me that day. That was it.
Hey, Dwayne, I mean, I think I'd have quit football. Yep. We'd at the very least, we'd have come to a mutual resolution. How about that? All right, 888-729-3776. Let's go with Chris in Oklahoma. Chris, thanks for calling the right time.
Hey, Bo. Hey, Shannon. So I live in Ada, Oklahoma. I don't expect you to do the research, but
now,
you can do the research.
There, right?
I'm sorry?
There's a junior college there. Is that where Jeremy Shockey's from, or where he went to school?
Shockey graduated from here, Ada the high school.
Got it.
Shockey did. Dan Cody did. He didn't make it. He wasn't
Florida
famous.
State.
He wasn't. Cody was. Dan Cody was on the OU team.
Oh, that's right.
But he didn't make it as far as Shockey did in the NFL. But so I have a somewhat of a prestigious high school, if that's what you want to call it. So you
got 30 seconds.
Basically, I started sophomore year as a center at 165. First day, the JV went off to their game on Monday. I was thinking, oh, man, what suckers. I don't even have to go play that game. And turn around, I have all my linemen playing linebacker and coming down on me for drills. I get smoked by a guy that's 255 pounds.
Hard Network out!
This is The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio or on the ESPN app.
Welcome to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. You can send us a tweet at the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. That is at Bomani_Jones. Michael Bennett's story has been a big one today. Apparently, Shannon, he, was basically broke down talking to media today about what had happened. We have an update to the story. I'm assuming that you've heard by now. Michael Bennett was at the fight on August 26th in Las Vegas. People thought there was a shooting. It turns out it seems like there wasn't even actually a shooting. Anyway, Michael Bennett said that he was thrown down on the ground. One cop put a knee in his back, another one put a gun to his head and said, "Don't move or I'll blow your effing head off," and all of this. And video then emerged of Michael Bennett being handcuffed on his back and asking, "What are you doing, sir? I have rights," and all these things. Now we have an update that says, and I quote from TMZ Sports, "Sources connecting to the investigation tell TMZ Sports when cops responded to the club for a possible shooting, they ordered everyone to get down and not move so they could properly search and investigate. We're told Bennett did not stay put. Instead, he ran, and a cop outside the club stopped him and ordered him down to the ground at gunpoint. Our sources say Bennett was detained until cops could determine he was not involved in any possible criminal activity, and he was released." And I asked this seriously, Shannon, as a question. You let me know if this is the wrong question for me to ask. Since when did everybody have to get on the ground for the cops to investigate?
Like, it's one thing if you want everyone to stay put. When did everyone have to lie on the ground? That's a great point.
How is there no, and also, can you imagine that? You at the club, you in your good clothes, and they like, "Yo, everybody, I ain't laying down." Like, "Hey, man, I'll post up over here on the wall. But I actually plan on taking this shirt back. Look on the inside, bruh. It's a tag." But anyway, that is what has happened. Giving you that update as it is there. Bennett says that they told him to get out and then everybody ran. That's what he says. That's what happened in the video. You can hear that during the incident. I don't know what the particulars are, whether there was a misunderstanding or anything else. My thing is this, though. Even if they told everybody to lay down and Michael Bennett ran out of there, why do you have to threaten to blow the man's head off? Like, if you've got him and he's on the ground and you got the gun to his head, there are no words that need to be said about blowing somebody's head off. The threat is implicit. It is there, right? Like, once he's down and he's handcuffed in that situation, why do you have to put the knee in his back? Like, that's the level of brutality that just seems to be totally unnecessary. So even if you want to make the argument that the police had a reason to stop Michael Bennett, which it sounds like they might have, to be perfectly honest, why you got to stop him like that? Like, why is that what it has to be? And that is where people start having questions about treatment from the police and stuff like that is, okay, if you feel like you need to stop somebody, that's fine. Why do you need to brutalize them in the process? Right? Like, if you feel like this is what you need to do, why do you need to do all these other things? Here's the thing, man. You got a gun. Like, once you're the one with the heat and you got your heat out before anybody else does, the rest of it is unnecessary. Shannon, when them cats robbed me, they didn't have to tell me, give me the money or I'll blow your head off. Nope. I don't even think they told me to give them the money. I just did.
Right. You already know what this is.
You know what time it is. Right? Like, that's what that was. You know what time it is. Yes, I do, in fact. Though I am not looking at a watch, because if I was looking at a watch, you would know what time it is because you would be looking at it on my watch. But that's what we've got here. And I've talked about this, enough through the show or whatever it is. Yes, we will ultimately find out what is going on. I still saw that short snippet of that video, and I look at it as, if this dude is laying down on the ground and he's handcuffed, why is there another cat, like, standing up on a higher level with a gun pointed at him? Like, why do you need to do that? And I think that's a fair question for anybody to ask under that circumstance. Why do you need a gun if the dude is already on the ground and handcuffed? Why do you need that? And if the gun is needed that bad, why are you so far away? It sounds like if you think your man needs some help keeping him down, you should be down there helping him out. But Shannon, I wonder if that dude was just afraid it might be a tussle and he ain't like to fight. Like, he told his other partner, "Yo, man, I was going to help you handcuff him, man, but I just thought it'd be better for me to stand back here. You look like you had it, under control, handcuffing that big old dude."
And that's what I was going to get to. How much did you think Bennett's size factored to it as well with the excessiveness?
Yeah, here's the problem, man. I done seen him smoke 12-year-olds. So, like, I think there's perhaps something to it, right? Like, the idea is he's such a big dude and everything else. Because that size thing does matter for people in interactions with police. Like, I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's a former NFL player. And he was saying, like, look, you got to understand this about me dealing with the cops. I got to diffuse everything when it happens because they're not going to try to fight me. Right? Like, there's some people that folks look like, man, your only choice, you got to take that big dog down. And that's the thought process that cat has to have at all times when that comes up is, I got to diffuse this so I don't get smoked, which I imagine is something that's pretty constant in the life of Michael Bennett also. But again, I done seen 12-year-olds get smoked. And when I say seen, I mean with my own eyes. I've witnessed it. I done seen 165-pound teenagers be made out into being superhumanly strong. So the size probably has something to do with it. The black probably had a lot more. All right, 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. Now, here's what I'm curious about, Shannon. What do you think the local Seattle police going to feel about this? Because Michael Bennett has been outspoken about these things. And we've seen the local police don't always like how things go down when people make their protests and have their statements and anything else. You think they got the grounds to do that on this one?
That's a great point. It'll be interesting to find out as more information comes out. How are they going to handle this?
I mean, well, think about it. Pete Carroll has already called it horrendous. Like, he's already put his name on it in that way. He's not tap danced about it as it stands right there. He's already there. I'll be curious to see how this all plays out because, again, this isn't Kaepernick, man. Kaepernick was the guy that he was saying the things he was saying on a team that wasn't good, that people weren't watching. People are going to watch the Seattle Seahawks a lot. And you're not in a position to get rid of him like the 49ers. Well, 49ers and Kaepernick kind of had a mutual parting of ways, but this isn't the same thing here with Michael Bennett. How is this going to go for him for the rest of the season? Because he is now Colin Kaepernick for the NFL 2017. Kaepernick will be Kaepernick for the history of all this stuff, but for 2016, he was the face of this stuff. Nobody else became the face. The face is now Michael Bennett. And Michael Bennett, as much as Kaepernick didn't have a level of back down, Bennett's a different animal than Kaepernick is. Like, I feel like Michael Bennett through all of this is knowing exactly what he was stepping into every step of the way when he's decided to be public about this. I think Kaepernick wound up in this and didn't realize it was going to play the way that it did. Bennett knows. Let's see how it goes. All right, 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. Switching gears a little bit. We've been asking you guys, tell us about the moment that you realized, I quit playing football. Maybe you liked it before, and then you got that one hit, and you were like, no, I'm good. I'm straight. I'm not doing that one anymore. Here's some of the stories that you guys have here. 888-729-3776. Talk to JD in Missouri. JD, thanks for calling the right time.
What's going on, Bo?
Doing all right, man.
Listen, so I'm a junior in high school. I'm in Detroit. I'm from the area. So it's a point after attempt, right? So traditional, just get off the field type of deal. But they got one of those swinging doors. So I'm a cornerback. I'm guarding the guy on the outside. Dude snaps the ball. Holder fumbles it. A man started running my way. So I started going in to get the tackle, right? But I forget about the guy I was supposed to be guarding. Ooh. So we take about 2 steps, and I turn this way. My man hit me with the funk of all funk. And I'm telling you, bro. I'm talking about my legs in the air, my shoulders are about to touch the ground, and all I hear my coach saying on the sideline is, "That's a clip. That's a clip." I'm thinking in mid-air, like, no, that's not a clip. I just got my head taken off. What are you talking about? Like, I'm on the ground, so now I'm in the mode of, okay, it's Friday night, some chicks at the game, everybody here. I got to get back to the sideline, bro. And by the grace of God, my sideline was still on my right side, so I just got up and I went straight over there. I didn't look at the crowd. I didn't look at no coaches, no players, no nothing. For the next probably 4 or 5 plays, I probably was on Venus or Mars or something. Like, I was just done. Like, it's over. You laughing way too hard at this story, bro. Like, I came to you because you my man. You put me on the David Bowie. You my guy. You laughing way too hard, bro.
I'm laughing at your sincerity. I'm laughing at how you mean every word of this.
Yes, Bo, I'm a basketball player. I went on to play 4 years of college basketball. After that, I was in the gym. I was back in the gym, get my jump shot ready. I'm not doing this no more. Like, this ain't for me. I'm 185 pounds. Some dude that's probably 185 pounds did that to me, but just for the simple fact that it could happen on a PAT, I'm like, okay, no, I'm good. I'm straight. I can't do it.
JD, lesson learned, man. I stand with you, though. I'm glad you made it out all right. I am. Dude, that's the thing about these stories, man. The sincerity. 888-729-3776. That's our telephone number. Coming up next, we got more from people telling about the day that they quit football. Also, Why y'all act like stealing signs is cool in baseball? I don't understand. You listen to ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the right time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Aaron Schatz, FootballOutsiders.com will join us next segment. Aaron Schatz will join us at 6:30 Eastern. Get you guys ready for the NFL season. That's the old soul song of the day, Jerk Out by The Time. How cold, Prince? Prince wrote this song in 1981, and then in 1990 knocked the dust off it at The Time, made it into a hit. Man, I missed that, dude. 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. We're going to talk a little baseball in a second. Don't run away. I'll make it worth it. But some of you guys have stories about the day that you decided you weren't playing football anymore, that moment where you realized you were moving on from playing football. We have had some great ones. Let's hit the phones right now, and we'll talk to Dion in New York. Dion, thanks for calling the right time.
All right, what's going on, Bo? Okay, so first of all, I got to tell you, I played soccer up until junior year in high school, right? But I've always been 6 feet tall, pushing 170, right? So I switch over to play football because everybody's like, oh, come on, you so big and so black. Play football, not soccer. So I'm like, all right. So I go over. The first day on drills, I'm not yelling like you're supposed to be yelling. So I get pulled off the line and thrown on the ground by the coach. I thought I'm like, what is you doing? So I stepped up in his face. And he was like, yo, you're supposed to be yelling. Like, you're not supposed to be pushing me, bro. You know what I'm saying? So that's just the first incident. You know what I'm saying? The second one was on my first ever game with contact. I'm playing linebacker. My head's not on a swivel. I get blocked, laid out flat. I get up after that. I'm like, all right, that's cool. We get two. So I'm moving up the depth chart because I'm playing running back. So I'm on the scout team. I do an amazing run. It's only me, and it just so happens to be the starting running back. He starts on safety as well. So he's like, you ain't about to take my spot. So he takes out my knee. I tear my ACL, 17 years old. I get up, and I'm done. I walk with a limp, but I'm all right.
Wow. Yo, yeah, you made the right call, brother. Appreciate the call. Shannon, that almost isn't in line with what we was going with. I wasn't going for it, and my competition cut my knee, and I ain't walked right since.
That and the coach.
Yeah. Let me tell you, that time I fought my coach, if we wanted to really open it up, I mean, if you want to call, feel free. 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. David in Maryland. David, thanks for calling the right time. David.
Hey, Bo, how's it going?
Doing all right, man.
So I'm 5'11", 160 in high school, and I never played football before freshman year. And then sophomore year of school, I was on JV, and we were doing this drill where a guard pulls against the linebacker. So it's just basically two dudes running straight into each other. So I do this drill, and I hit the guy, and I black out for a quick second. I don't remember what happened, but when I got my senses back, I just see a dude laying on the ground, and the coach is yelling, go, finish the play. And I was like, okay, and I just ran. And then I feel like I got a concussion from that, but I wasn't sure, and I had the worst academic semester of my life after that.
Yeah, appreciate the call, man. These stories are a lot funnier in the previous 2 hours, man. Yeah. Like Shady and I talk about, though, like how with alcohol, that if we called alcohol anything else, we ask people to tell their worst story about drinking, you'd be like, yo, you don't never need to mess with that stuff ever again. And then you wouldn't. I feel like it's kind of the same with football, right? Like if we take the ball out of football, we're like, dog, what are you doing? All right, 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. Switching gears a little bit. So Shady, help me out here with this. The Red Sox are stealing signs from the Yankees using an Apple Watch?
Apparently so. They're taking their stealing signs to the next level.
Now, first of all, one of the interesting details about this is the New York Times had their ace investigative reporter on this, right? Like their top investigative reporter, he's the one on Twitter with exclusive Red Sox been stealing signs. So the Red Sox apparently had been using video to steal hand signals from catchers, and they had a trainer who somehow was part of this, would look at his Apple Watch and then send the information to the bench, and then from there they would figure it out. And apparently the Yankees were awesome. How'd you know that pitch was coming? And then they got to digging around, and then they found out that this had happened. And then the Red Sox decided to file a claim against the Yankees, saying that the Yankees were using a camera from the Yes Network to steal signs. I feel like that was petty. Like I just feel I feel like the Red Sox got caught, and they decided to get their petty on. That's how I feel. Here's my thing. Yes, stealing signs has been happening since the very beginning of forever. Like, I totally get that. But I don't understand how it is. Did you see that where Dombrowski said that he didn't see anything wrong with stealing signs, and his argument was that everybody does it, therefore there's nothing wrong with stealing signs? Like, is there not a measure of respect for the game that you got to have out here? Like, I feel like you need to make your signs complex enough, or, you know, well, the deal is you need to make your signs complex enough that they're not easy to steal. Right? But at the same time, we got to appreciate the nature of baseball requires that there are signs, because you can't scream out, hey, fellas, we about to do the hit and run. You can't do that. You got to have signs to show the hit and run. Everybody understands that you got to have signs. So, like, if the sign for hit and run is the third base coach acting like he's swinging a bat and then looking like he's running, then, yeah, I feel like you deserve to know that it's the hit and run. Like, I remember I was in Little League, and I forget what level we got to, but there was this one coach, and he was always like, I'm trying to think of a good example of a movie, but like the team that's like a professional team, but it's Little League, like they taking Little League a little bit too, like for real. It
was like Danny O'Shea from Little Giants?
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. O'Shea, but yeah.
No, Al Bundy's team, right? Yeah, like there. That's what we're talking about. It's like that sort of thing. And so nobody else has signs. We weren't really at that level of things to have signs. And the dude has signs, but the problem was the signs were so simple. Like, I would just be standing there on first base. He's about to steal. I wasn't trying to steal the signs. The signs were just simple, like it was impossible to avoid. But come on, man. If you're using a camera from the outfield to get the catcher, you know you're wrong for that, right? You know you cheating. You know that they have to do these things, right? They have to do it because there's just no way to protect the catcher. He has to have some idea of what pitch is coming so he doesn't get hit in the chest. Right? You know that this is what it's got to be. Yeah, there's something wrong with stealing signs. Just show some respect for the game. These cats are just trying to communicate without telling you. You going out of your way being nosy. You listening too hard. You looking too close. And technology does feel like taking it the extra mile, because there's enough technology out here in the world that no sign is safe. Right? Like, how can you mask your sign enough given all the technology that we got out here in the world? Shows the respect for the game, you suckers. 888-729-3776. Got one more call on dudes talking about why they quit playing football. Let's hit the phones, and we will go with Brian in Colorado. Brian, thanks for calling the right time.
Hey, what's going on, Bo? Big fan of the show. Very rarely catch you live, so I was glad I was able to. And I'm really looking forward to you and Pablo in January. But anyway, so my story, a lot of these stories about people get blown up. Mine's a little bit different. So going into my freshman year in high school, I was young. I was 12, 13 years old. I was 5'4", 140 pounds. And I'm playing football. I'm not getting any burn. The only time I got to play was special teams. But the thing is, my mom really loves to take pictures. And she doesn't take just candid pictures. She doesn't come and just take pictures on the sideline. She came to practice one day and interrupted practice to make people stop and take pictures with me and set up pictures on the side and taking all these photos and interrupting plays and all that stuff like that. And so I was so embarrassed, I just quit. I stopped playing. I wasn't getting any burn anyway, so it wasn't worth it. So, yeah, that's why I quit. I got a quick side note for you, though, real quick, Bo. So my name is Brian. I'm from Colorado. I sound like this, but I'm 6'3", 240-pound black guy with a Malcolm X tattoo. So
I had you as black. No. We got a more discerning ear than that, baby. We had you as black. We had you.
Oh, really?
Now, the
very
mama
rarely does that happen.
Well, the difficulty, though, the mama making the practice stop to take pictures, the desire to do so, very black. The power to make it happen, very white. Like, that's where the confusion would have come up. But now we got you figured out, man. But, hey, we right up on this break, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man.
All right, now, 888-729-3776. That's our telephone number. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Air Shots, FootballOutsiders.com. Are the Jets and Browns really tanking? You listen to ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the right time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. All guests join us on the Shell Penzo Performance Line, just like our next guest. He's the man in charge of FootballOutsiders.com. We'd like to have him on the right time to talk about football. His name is Aaron Schatz. Now, Aaron, I was going through earlier today the Football Outsiders Almanac, and the intro was always interesting. And the one point I always like to make before we get into the season, you always had this one right here. Rushing is more dependent on the offensive line than people realize, but pass protection is more dependent on the quarterback than people realize. Which is to say, the quarterback is more responsible for preventing sacks than the line?
Well, I don't know if the quarterback is more responsible, but he's a lot more responsible than people think. Like, people tend to only blame the offensive line. But there are some huge differences between quarterbacks and how many sacks they take. This is known as the Rob Johnson rule. I mean, if you remember Rob Johnson with the Bills, Flutie would take 10 sacks in 8 games, and then Rob Johnson would take 35 sacks in the other 8 games. So there's no question certain quarterbacks like Drew Brees, Tom Brady know how to get rid of the football. Other quarterbacks are always trying to make something happen, and they'll get sacked more often because of that. Russell Wilson is spectacular, but in some ways he makes his own pass pressure by trying to make the big play instead of checking down or throwing the ball away when the pressure is on him.
All right, it's Aaron Schatz of FootballOutsiders.com. All right, now let's look at the NFL season as it's coming up. Now, based on the DVOA ratings that you guys do, which team's got the hardest schedule?
We have the hardest schedule. Well, it was Philadelphia a couple days ago, and then things got tweaked in the last day or two, but now it's Dallas. But basically, it's the entire NFC East that has the hardest schedules because that's the best division in football, where all 4 teams were in our top 10 last year. Not only do they have to play 6 games against each other, they have to play 4 games against the AFC West, which is probably the second best division in football. So it is going to be really tough for NFC East teams to make it in as wild cards, even though I think all 4 of those teams look like they're above average again this year. Well, Washington may be more like at average, but the other 3 teams are above average.
Well, the other 3 being above average means that you had the Eagles last year as being in the top 10, which I found to be a bit surprising.
Yeah, I know that our Eagles rating from last year was weird for people. Part of that is they had a lot of close games they lost, and then when they won, they tended to win big. The other thing about the Eagles is that they declined over the course of the year. So recency bias, we remember the struggles that offense had in the second half of the year, but our rating incorporated the whole year, including when they were doing things like beating Pittsburgh by 30 points or whatever they did early on in the season. Philadelphia also had a lot of value for special teams. And while they'll probably have a lot of value from special teams again this year, special teams is a lot less consistent than offense and defense. So you don't quite know what's coming.
Now, which team had the easiest schedule? I'm going to guess it's someone in the AFC East because they get to play each other.
Well, geez, there's only one team in the AFC East that gets to play the other 3, isn't there? I mean, it's not fair, right? The Patriots had the easiest schedule by our numbers last year. They have the easiest projected schedule by our numbers for this year. Even the out-of-division games, they play a lot of teams that we project to decline a little bit, such as Atlanta and Denver. And our projections don't see the big Tampa Bay improvement that a lot of people are expecting, although the storyline that would allow that to happen is certainly there. I wouldn't be shocked if the Tampa Bay offense put it together. But the Patriots' schedule is just – the only thing that makes it hard is all the road games that they have in a pack in the middle of the season. And even there, one of those road games is actually in Mexico City. And my guess is that that's going to be a pretty evenly split crowd between the Patriots and Raiders.
All right, we are talking to Aaron Schatz of FootballOutsiders.com here on The Right Time. Now, you talked about the Falcons and their regression. What are your projections telling you about them?
Well, we have the Falcons just narrowly missing the playoffs. Basically, the Falcons and Panthers come out in our numbers as about equal in total value for our projection. In fact, the Falcons are a little bit ahead of the Panthers. We think their offense will come back a little bit because it improved so much last year, but it should still be like a top 5 offense. The biggest difference between the Falcons and the Panthers is because of how they finished last year. The Falcons have to play at Seattle and Dallas, while Carolina plays at San Francisco and then Philadelphia. And considering especially that Atlanta-Dallas game is after any Elliott suspension, assuming that he actually serves one, that is a really big schedule difference and could mean difference in the division. Now, the asterisk on this is that there's a lot of really young talent on that Atlanta defense improving. And so while there's no indicator that they're going to make the leap, there certainly is a reasonable possibility that Atlanta defense makes the leap, and that makes up for the offense falling back.
Now, how do your projections deal with rookies? Because I hear you talk about the Panthers, and I don't, Christian McCaffrey apparently is going to be a big deal in the offense, but I don't know how.
So this is kind of crazy, right? But offensive rookies, other than quarterbacks are their own, ball of wax. Offensive rookies, the impact that they have on the team is less predictable than defensive rookies. So offensive rookies, skill position guys, are not really considered in our projection system because how they're going to impact the offense is really unpredictable. Whereas with top drafted defensive guys, you can usually predict that all other things being equal, drafting defensive guys high in the draft will improve your defense a little bit. It's not that drafting offensive players isn't useful or that they don't have great seasons or they don't contribute or they aren't valuable in the long run. It's just really hard to predict in the short run.
All right, we're talking to Aaron Schatz of FootballOutsiders.com. Before we let you go, last thing I want to hit you on is there any team that looks like they'll be better than most lay people are expecting based on your projections?
All right, I got to throw another asterisk on this, but I have been riding the Rams bandwagon all offseason because of Wade Phillips and the incredible record that Wade Phillips has of improving defenses. The asterisk is this Aaron Donald holdout. If Aaron Donald is really not in the lineup, it is really hard to see Phillips turning the Rams into the top 5 defense. And they really need to be one of the 2 or 3 best defenses in the league in order to actually be a wild card contender because the offense is still going to be probably really bad. But in our projections, the Rams come out number 2 on special teams and number 2 on defense with the 27th ranked schedule. And that's enough to lift the offense to where they're on the cusp of a wild card at around 8-8.
Now, if they make 8-8 without Jeff Fisher, I'm going to think that he's contagious.
Well, but 8-8 would be an improvement this year,
huge.
right? I mean,
that is true.
Right? Like, you'd be like, if Jared Goff was just like garden variety bad instead of whatever that was last year, and the defense was really good, and the Rams were 8-8, and they were actually in the playoff race until like week 16 or so, I mean, that would be a huge – Sean McVay would be a Coach of the Year candidate if our projections turn out correct.
You're right about that. That's Aaron Schatz, FootballOutsiders.com. Also check out the Football Outsiders Almanac, man. Looking forward to talking to you later in the season.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, man. You have a good one.
In addition to the Ezekiel Elliott appeal of his suspension, the Michael Bennett situation is really the big news story of the day. And what happened with him with the cops out in Las Vegas. And if you haven't heard, here's Bomani Jones early today on The Right Time discussing the Bennett situation.
There's real consequences to this sort of thing. And if Michael Bennett hadn't handled this in the way that he had, there's no telling what somebody would have thought if they just come across some video of him being on the ground and what conclusions that people would have been drawn immediately about him. The presumption is always going to be that you have to prove that something happened to you at the hands of the police in a way that does not happen vice versa. Now, that seems to be counterintuitive to the notion of what it's like to be American, but that is the way it goes. Like, that's the way that we handle these things when they happen to athletes, is we're immediately going to what it is that you did wrong. People have been doing this on airwaves as it relates to Michael Bennett, where it's like, well, hold on, we're not sure. Well, hold on, we're not sure. Well, hold on, we're not sure, and all this stuff. Here's the one thing I am sure of. The reason that a police officer can feel so confident about throwing Michael Bennett down and his partner coming with the gun or whatever it is. You know, the big reason why he can feel so confident doing this? Because this is what y'all want. Now, y'all is not really, I guess, going to any particular person. You can say that I'm generalizing, but I will call y'all in this case America. And the reason I will call y'all in this case America, because America keep letting this happen. Like, a fundamental mistake that people are making is they're assuming that, and this is, a certain subset of people, but they're assuming that people are going to see this video of what happened with Michael Bennett, and then finally, maybe now, they will get the point on what it is. Look, man, it's 2017. We've been using these tools and these devices to spread this information out for as long as it's been, right? Like, Rodney King was 25 years ago. Watts riots were 1965. We can go back all the way through history, through everything else. Matters of police brutality have been a big thing and in the forefront of people's consciousness for a very, very, very long time. There's nothing new about the notion of police brutality. There is nobody at this point, unless they just turned 11 years old or something like that, there's nobody that's going to see this and be like, oh, my goodness, finally now I get what the point is. Nah, I mean, I think maybe some, right? Like, I don't think that people are beyond redemption on this matter necessarily, but I think that people get the point very, very well. I think the point that people do not get on the other side is they like this. Like, that's the police that they want. They want the police that's just out here snatching random people and throwing them on the ground and putting guns to their heads. Anything it takes to make you, quote unquote, safe, at least in your notion of what safety is. Right? That's all that is. And then on top of that, you are going to fight vehemently. Many of you, not all you, but many of you are going to fight vehemently for your right to not give a damn about what happens to black people. Because the fundamental undercurrent of a lot that goes on here that I feel like that gets lost is that very thing right there. No one is going to infringe upon your right to not care what happens to black people.
All right, and some of Michael Bennett's quotes today from his presser in Seattle, Bennett was asked, and Bennett said nothing of this magnitude in terms of racial profiling has happened to him before. And he also said, people ask why I sit down during the national anthem. This is why.
Yeah, I do think there's something of note, too, is that the notion of the kneel, right? Because one thing you got to remember is the problem isn't Kaepernick kneeling. The problem is whatever Kaepernick does, because kneeling was ultimately the compromise. Michael Bennett's not even making that compromise. Like, he is not paying any level of deference. And he is a different messenger than Kaepernick, who seemed to a degree to be a reluctant one. No, Michael Bennett wants to be that dude. He wants to be the guy that is up front on these things. I'm sure he did not want to be the guy with a pistol to his head, but he wants to be out there in a different way and has a visibility in a different way and is on a team that is visible in a different way. What happens with him throughout this season and the different places they go is going to be really, really interesting for us to watch. But, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on The Right Time. We do this every weekday, 4 p.m. Eastern. Shad and Cat, Allie, thanks so much. Jayla and Jacoby are coming up next.